to have with us Professor Rishikeshan T. Krishnan, Professor Corporate Strategy and Policy, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Professor Krishnan was a visiting faculty at the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad during 2011-12. Earlier, in August 2010, he completed a 3-year term as Jamuna Raghavan Chair Professor of Entrepreneurship at IIMB. He was the fall 2008 visiting scholar at the Center for the Advanced Study of India, University of Pennsylvania. In November 2010, Professor Krishnan received the Devang Mehta Award for Best Teacher in Strategic Management. Professor Krishnan has served on a number of committees set up by the Government of India, NASSCOM and CII related to innovation in India. He is on the boards of 3 companies and is a trustee of the Foundation for Excellence India Trust, an organization committed to helping economically underprivileged and academically talented students to complete their higher education through one of India's largest scholarship programs. Professor Krishnan writes extensively and has more than 140 publications spanning outlets that include referred journals, the popular press, case studies, book chapters, and a book. Professor Krishnan holds an MSc in Physics from the Indian Institute of Technology at Kanpur and an MS in Engineering Economic Systems, now Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University. He obtained his doctorate from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where he won the Outstanding Thesis Proposal Award instituted by the Industrial Finance Corporation of India. I request Sir to please share the dice with us. Please, sir.
Yeah, very good morning to all of you. I'd really like to thank the ITM University and all your professors and deans for inviting me to be here today, and particularly to deliver a lecture in memory of Professor C.K. Prahalad. As was already mentioned at the introduction, Professor Prahalad played a very important role in developing the strategy discipline and was one of the most seminal contributors to several of the top ideas in our field. And being a scholar, of course, from India, it's particularly a pride for us that he was able to contribute so many important ideas to the field of strategy. So what I will do in my talk today is give you a brief introduction to some of the ideas he came up with, but also focus specifically on one of his ideas, that is innovating for the bottom of the pyramid, which has evoked a lot of interest and attention, but has also proved to be extremely challenging. So what I will try to share with you in my presentation is what are some of the challenges we face in implementing Professor Prahalad's concept when we actually want to address the bottom of the pyramid. But let me start by just giving you some background on Professor Prahalad himself, because there were several things that he managed to do very effectively during his lifetime as a consultant, academic, and researcher. The first thing he was very good at doing was essentially having a pulse of what is the problems that the top companies in the world are facing. He worked very closely with large multinational corporations in particular, and this gave him the opportunity to gauge what are some of the burning problems that these companies are trying to address. And he then focused most of his attention on trying to solve these problems. A second thing which many people believe he was very good at was what is called amplifying weak signals. What does that mean? That means essentially understanding a problem before it has become fully blown, or before actually the trend has become completely evident to everybody. So he was able to see the early evidence and was able to then come up with concepts and theories to address this early evidence which he identified. The third thing which he did, which I already just mentioned, was that he came up with new concepts to address this, And most of the time, his ideas were what he himself called next practices rather than best practices. Why is this important? Because when you are following a best practice, you are only copying or imitating what somebody has already done. So, you know, there was a question about competitive advantage. Typically, a best practice imitation cannot give you competitive advantage because you are doing something that's already been done by others. What you need to really advance to the front is to come up with something, and that's what C.K. Prahalad was very good at identifying. And last but not the least, all his ideas came from very relevant and grounded research. He wasn't one of those people who was very interested in statistical analysis. He didn't take large quantities of data and churn them through SPSS. But what he did very effectively was qualitative research, interacting very closely with thought leaders in the business arena, and then coming up with very powerful concepts to address these challenges. Now, most management scholars are lucky if in their lifetime they come up with even one powerful idea or concept. But I think the most distinguishing factor of Professor Prahalad, as I mentioned, is that he managed to come up with 4 or 5 important concepts during his lifetime. Let's just take a very quick tour of some of these concepts, and then I'm going to dwell in greater length on the bottom of the pyramid, innovation. The first important concept that Professor Prahalad came up with was something called dominant logic. What was dominant logic? He basically identified that most organizations, the people who are running these companies, tend to develop certain mental maps and models of how that kind of a business is to be run. And once that particular mental map or model gets formed, that tends to be the lens through which they look at everything. What is the result of this? The result in this is that managers are likely to follow what has worked in the past rather than trying something new. And this is the reason why most companies generally suffer from a high degree of inertia. They tend to follow the same track instead of moving away from that track. There's another implication of this whole notion of dominant logic, and that is that companies sometimes, when they diversify, if they diversify into a business which has a different dominant logic, they often don't succeed in that business. In fact, if you just think a very simple contemporary example, you look at Mr. Vijay Mallya and the UB Group, and you look at their success in both the liquor and the beer industry, but you look at the challenges they have faced in the airline industry. And you will see that there is a clear gap. And what is that gap? It's often driven by the dominant logic. The secret of success in the liquor and brewery industry is very different from what it takes to succeed in the airline industry. The airline industry is very efficiency driven. It's very driven by just being extremely focused on operations. You cannot succeed in the airline industry by just building brands. In fact, there is no airline in the world which is successful brand driven airline. So this is a very fundamental difference in the dominant logic between, say, the liquor industry and the airline industry. And you can see that to Mr. Mallya's cost, this has actually been one of the reasons why the UB Group has not succeeded in the airline business. A second important concept that Professor Prahalad came up with was the whole idea of strategic intent. Now, of course, that companies formulate strategies and that companies succeed by coming up with visions and all that was not new. But what C.K. Prahalad managed to identify very clearly was the kind of power and the kind of energy which a strong strategic intent can give to a company. And we have seen several examples in the history of business where, for example, a company like Komatsu, which was a very far behind follower in the earth moving equipment industry behind Caterpillar, was able to not only catch up with them but in some cases even do better than them, because they had this very strong focus on trying to do better than Caterpillar and setting much more challenging targets to be successful in the earth moving equipment industry. So the strategic intent of companies, and we've seen several of them in India, enables companies to grow from small enterprises into large ones, and that's what allows companies to be successful even though they start with very limited resources. The third important idea which Professor Prahalad came up with was the idea of core competence. Now, unfortunately, this core competence is an idea which has been largely misunderstood by people. In fact, if you look at Prahlad's contribution to core competence, he had something very specific in mind. His specific idea of core competence was that companies become very strong and powerful if they are able to combine different resources and competencies very tightly to give a competitive advantage. So what he was implying here is that competitive advantage doesn't come from a single resource. It actually comes from the seamless integration of multiple resources and competencies, which then give you an advantage in going into multiple markets. For example, he used to often give the example of Federal Express, which of course is a very good company in the logistics and overnight delivery space. But its advantage came from its ability to integrate all these different technologies, barcodes, linear programming, wireless communication, etc. So you can see that the whole notion of core competence is that you cannot succeed by just having a single resource or capability alone. You need to have multiple resources and capabilities and combine these in a very well integrated kind of a manner. Professor Prahlad also gave three very distinct criteria for what a core competence is, or what do you need to have to call a competence a core competence. What are those three? The first thing he said is that the competence should really contribute in a disproportionate manner to the value you're delivering to customers. It cannot be just something that's incremental. It has to be something which the customers perceive as providing them significantly higher value. For example, if you buy a vehicle from Honda, the reason you buy that vehicle is because Honda has been able to develop engines over time that seem to really combine contradictory capabilities. You're able to get better fuel efficiency and better power at the same time, which often was thought to be a trade-off in the past. So the core competence of Honda comes because it's able to combine its different expertise in engine design to provide that benefit, a disproportionate benefit to the customer. The second important characteristic of a core competence is it provides differentiation vis-a-vis other competitors. In fact, if your competence doesn't really distinguish you from other competitors, it's not a core competence at all. So many companies may have, for example, good brands and good distribution, but some companies clearly have brands and distribution which are stronger than others. And that's the point he's trying to make about a core competence. And the third important characteristic of a core competence is what we call extendability. Extendability means that this competence allows you to go into some other industry. It allows you to diversify at much lower risk than other companies. So let's just take a small example to see how do we apply this core competence concept in the Indian context. So let me just ask you maybe a question at this point. So if you look at a company like Reliance, what do you see as, you know, the distinctive competencies or the real differentiators that Reliance has? Any of you, any of the students, what do you see as the real distinguishing features of Reliance? Okay. Distribution. But what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Reliance? You just think back to the time when Dhirubhai set up his first petrochemical facility in the late 70s. And then all that they've done after that, setting up the Jamnagar